All right. Good morning, everyone. First off, I am so honored to be speaking with you today. But before we get started, I did want to share something. The last time I delivered a sermon, I was 21 years old. It was a warm, humid summer night at a nursing home in Flint, Michigan. Christina and I had just started dating a few months before, and I was an evangelical at the time. She was so patient to put up with the type of sermon I delivered that night. And I asked her this morning, I said, well, what kind of sermon, because I can't remember what kind of sermon I preached. And she said, yeah, there was a lot of yelling, hollering. So the following sermon that I'll be delivering today will be just a little different than that I delivered that summer night. I guess what I'm saying is, please be patient. I may be just a little rusty. But I did want to share just a little bit about a journey that I've been on the last 2 years or so, and the lessons I've learned through that journey. But this journey actually started 44 years ago. In May of 1979, my grandfather died. I was a 6-year-old boy, and that was really the first time I had ever experienced death. The memory of being told about his death is forever etched in my mind. The cause of his death, as I would soon learn, was a massive heart attack. He was only 62 years old and 1 year into retirement. Throughout the course of my life, his death became something I viewed almost as otherworldly, as dreamlike, not really even comprehending it. The reality of a heart attack would again revisit my family when I had one 42 years later. I was unprepared and unaware that this could happen to me. I was 47 years old, normal cholesterol, blood pressure, didn't smoke, exercise, and really tried to watch what I ate. Nonetheless, on August 27th, 2021, at 4 a.m., I woke up feeling nauseated, lightheaded, sweating a lot with a slight chest pain. Initially, I thought I had a stomach bug, indigestion, or maybe even COVID. It was my wife, Chris, who wisely insisted I go to the hospital, and I owe her my life for that decision. Though at the time, neither of us suspected it was a heart attack. Upon arriving at the Mayo Clinic Hospital, an EKG immediately alarmed the attending nurse so much that he just sprinted out of the room. And I realized at the time of the gravity of that situation. As you can see here on the screen, on the left-hand side is the right coronary artery. I had 100% blockage in my right coronary artery. The scene in the ER resembled a medical drama on TV. And I kept asking everyone that would listen, like, hey, is there a possibility I'm not having a heart attack? And I was half expecting Dr. House from the TV show to come around the corner and offer a snarky and dismissive comment, but, no such luck. The cardiologist then told me that they were going to perform an angioplasty and put in 2 stents, and they were going to go through my wrist, and if that didn't work, they'd go through my groin, and then if that failed, they would open my chest. The mention of my chest and opening it up really caught my attention, like quick. Luckily, they cleared out the blockage and put 2 stents in through my wrist, thankfully. I was awake and really watched the entire procedure on a little monitor by my bed. Now, as Chris and I were sitting in the recovery room, I tried to create a little bit of levity out of a pretty serious and dire last hour or so by quoting Mark Twain to her, "Rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated." So needless to say, this mustered a really tight smile and kind of an amused look from her, one that I've kind of, seen over the years, kind of the eye roll. But, I'd really addressed the 600-pound gorilla in the room, my brush with death. The first night in the hospital was really long and torturous, filled with worry, uncertainty, as my heart occasionally went out of rhythm. I leaned heavily on my meditation practice that I had started a year or so ago, and I was able to really create some room for the feelings and the emotions I was experiencing at that time. The following day, as you can see here, sitting in the chair at the hospital, a flurry of doctors, blood work, tests, and new medications that I hadn't been taking before really marked the beginning of a plan for change for my life. It's said that nothing clears the mind like a trip to the gallows. Aside from the gallows humor, I'd like to share really 3 simple lessons, that's all. The first one is 2 lives. Prior to the heart attack, I lived as if I had more than one. I lived with the thought of this life was just really a practice run for a greater one down the road a bit. I lived as if I was an observer of my own life, never really fully appreciating my life as it is now, people and also things. I would take life for granted. I would often get caught up in the hustle and bustle of my daily routine and sometimes really forgot to appreciate the beauty that surrounds me. Confucius said, we all have 2 lives. The second one begins when we realize we only have one. I thought to myself, what could I do to unlock a new way of living? A way that brings a greater fulfillment and purpose. I imagined for a moment that I had been given 2 lives. The first one is the one I was familiar with, the one that I was not fully recognizing the value that it holds. This life was characterized by routine, inertia. However, the second one was there for me. One that really begins when I acknowledge the fragility of my existence. This second life is about embracing the present, seizing opportunities, living authentically. It's about shedding really the trivial worries that weighed me down and focusing really on what truly matters. After the heart attack, I realized that I only had one life. This realization has become really a catalyst for change for me. It's pushed me back to step outside of my comfort zone, to take calculated risks, and to make the most of every moment. This change has started with mindfulness, gratitude, setting meaningful goals, and pursuing them passionately. Has really infused my day with a degree of purpose. Trying to live a life built on values and to live in alignment with those values. Today, I would encourage everyone to remember that we indeed have 2 lives. The first one is the one we're given, and the second one is the one we choose to embrace when we realize its significance. You want some advice? Don't wait for a heart attack wake-up call to start living fully. I wish I didn't. But instead, let's awaken to the truth that our time is limited and every moment counts. I'm going to put on my reading glasses here. The second is really the second arrow. After the heart attack, I remember thinking that my life was over. I would always, at the time, I always thought I would view my life as pre-heart attack and post-heart attack. The second half of my life would always be worse, right? I would have to worry about what I ate, my stress level, and would always be worried about having another one. You know, the 2 words that I would ask is, why me? Why did this happen to me? I've experienced so much trauma in my life. My brother died young at 26. I had an abusive father that abused my mom, chaotic life growing up, and losing my mom 7 months earlier when I had the heart attack. I felt like I had really lost my youth when I had the heart attack. Up to that point, you know, I wasn't young, but I wasn't old. I was kind of right in the middle somewhere. I thought I was immortal, and really having health problems was for everyone else but me. I was the one who remained healthy while everyone else got sick. This organ, my heart, that had spent my entire life beating and keeping me alive without much thought from me, had suddenly betrayed me. I remember in my darkest moment, and I'm ashamed to admit this, I Googled the life expectancy of someone that had had a heart attack. I felt a cold shiver go down my body, realizing that it wasn't just another person I was reading about, it was me. This is really hard for me to really kind of replay those thoughts that I had, that I was experiencing in my life at the time. But I stumbled on a story that really kind of put things in perspective. It's the story of the second arrow. And it's from Buddhist tradition. The Buddha tells a story about a man who had been struck by an arrow. The man cried out in pain and agony. He began to ask questions, like, who shot this arrow? What kind of arrow was it? Who made the arrow? What's the motive behind shooting the arrow at me? The man became consumed with these questions, demanding answers and becoming more agitated. As a result, his condition worsened and the pain that he felt intensified. The man in the story was struck by an arrow and then shot himself with a second arrow through his reactions. So it is with human suffering. Look, the first arrow represents unavoidable pain, heart attack, and the challenges that life brings to all of us. For people here, this could be physical pain, loss, disappointment, or any other type of difficulty that we may be dealing with. The second arrow is the suffering we add to ourselves through our reactions, attachments, aversion to the pain, the stories we tell ourselves, and the thoughts we have. The first arrow is a part of life and really can't be avoided. The second arrow is something we have control over. I realized I was suffering from the second arrow. I was consumed with self-pity, asking myself why, expressing confusion, uncertainty. I was telling myself stories that always had a dire ending. By practicing mindfulness, self-awareness, I learned that I could reduce the suffering caused by the second arrow. Not entirely get rid of it, but able to find peace and resilience in the face of life's challenges. The second arrow caused me to wallow in those thoughts, but I also pushed those thoughts away too, at times. Neither of these two techniques are effective, to wallow or to push them away. The best choice I made was really to allow these thoughts and emotions to be here. They were I was experiencing something. But what I did was to just allow those thoughts to be here and then to observe them mindfully, not wallowing them or adding fuel to the fire by pushing them away. I still struggle with the second arrow, be it the heart attack or other things in life, but the times and the pains from it have really lessened a bit. Pain is unavoidable in life, but suffering is not. It was Carl Jung that said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." The third is attachment to a certain outcome. Okay, so as Carrie said, planner, making lists, all of that. Now, before my heart attack took me by surprise, I was, and still I am, a planner, a person who's addicted to making lists. Thus, my job for the last 25 years or so, a financial planner. So prior to the heart attack, I was so attached to a specific outcome that if I ate right, exercised enough, worked hard enough, this would result in a positive outcome, right? Being in good health, living to 100, having success, etc. But here's the twist. The heart had its own agenda and introduced me to a reality that I hadn't planned for. It showed me that life has its own script and one that doesn't always stick to the lines that we've written for it. I'm not suggesting at all that we should just throw up our hands and say, whatever will be, will be. But to really illustrate this, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I'll start with art. Susan Felix was a premier artist in Berkeley, California. She used a technique called pit firing. It's the oldest known method of firing pottery, dating back to 25,000 BCE. It involves, as we've shown here, it involves placing pottery in a pit, often with combustible materials like sawdust, leaves, or paper. These materials are ignited, and as they burn, they create a diverse range of colors and patterns on the pottery surface. quite often resulting in truly beautiful works of art. My life was a clay vessel up to that point that I had carefully crafted, just as a potter molds a clay jar. I put my heart and soul into shaping this vessel, hoping that it turns out exactly as I envisioned, pristine, flawless, perfectly symmetrical. The reality is my life was placed into a fiery pit. As the flames danced around me, the heat and unpredictability of the fire brought about a transformation that I could not entirely control, and that scared the crap out of me. My life emerged from the pit with unique marks, colors, imperfections, really telling a story of my journey through the flames. The flames and the time in the fire was intense, disorienting, and seemingly never-ending. Unexpected challenges and circumstances have reshaped my path, leaving me with outcomes that I didn't really anticipate. I guess what I'm trying to say is the lesson here is just as the artist must let go when placing the pottery into the pit, I'm trying to release my attachment to rigid outcomes in my life. I'm trying to embrace that the most beautiful and meaningful moments arise from unexpected twists and turns. I'm trying to remember to appreciate the unique beauty in my imperfections and find peace in the process of becoming. I'm learning to embrace the journey, and in doing so, really discover the true essence of living without attachment to preconceived outcomes. I've tried to really focus on things I can control. Making sure I put the right effort, using my intelligence and common sense to guide me, but the outcome is out of my hands. This is still a struggle for me, even now, as Chris can attest to, as I still want to control, as I still want to create that perfect piece of pottery, right? Mindfulness is really something that's really helped me to recognize when I'm being hooked by those thoughts and attachment, and when I become attached to certain emotions and thoughts. So, in closing, where does that leave me now? Coming back to my grandfather, Jesse, unlike him, I survived my heart attack and have really been given a second chance at life. While I hope for a long life, whether I have a long or short life, because remember, I can't control it, none of us can either, I'm committed that the heart attack is not the end of my life, but is just the beginning of a new chapter. The pre-heart attack John, though, would probably have a heart attack at the thought of not being able to control the outcome. I know he would. He would freak out. His hair would be on fire. It would just be a mess. But the post-heart attack John has come to realize a certain peace by really allowing me to treasure each present moment, because that is the only moment in which life is available. Don't wait to realize that second life. Life has pain, but suffering is optional. And loosen the grip just a little bit on a particular outcome in life. Realize your life is more than what's happened to you. You're not defined by tragedies, reversals, successes, or failures, but you are defined by what you choose to become. Thank you so much for your attention.